and no war stories.
Pop quiz.
There you go. So Ray's work reflected the shift with how the making of art dramatically changed in the mid-20th century. Because of the GI Bill, many people attended university art programs. Ray went to Washington University in St. Louis. He was part of a generation of creatives who, after World War II, used art to engage and embrace new ways of seeing and making. His work at WashU focused on both traditional and contemporary trends in sculpture. Ray was introduced to many different materials and periods of art while an art student. Ray began to utilize creative problem solving as a key element in his creative process, and much later in his teaching. The ceramics department at PSU was a very active, thriving hub. At times it scared people. The first piece I want to talk about is this Chun piece right here. And Chun glazes are, they're from the 11th to the 15th century from the Sung Dynasty. And they're known for a high silica content with a lot of depth, and they have this opalescent quality. And then with the addition of a little bit of copper and just the right atmosphere, you get these wonderful reds and blushes. Ray used this for his thesis work with Carlton Ball, and it became the focus of trying to find contemporary materials he can use to make an ancient glaze, and then also find the firing techniques to develop the right atmosphere to get the blushes, the reds, and the purples. I'm just going to go back. I skipped a part here. Ray explored different materials throughout his creative life. He not only used clay, glass, metal, but incorporated various building materials for vessels, sculptures, and architectural commissions. He worked with John Gray for work at Salishan, Sun River, Mountain Park, as well as many, many other architectural commissions. I cannot name all the public-private collaborations he was a part of. Today we will look at these 6 pieces to see how Ray's ideas and techniques developed. All right, so this for me is, I get nervous just going near this piece. This is Sojo Hamada, and this is my opinion, so if some of you start going like this, we can take it outside. One of the most important influences on the emerging crafts movement was the Menge philosophy. Sojo Hamada and Bernard Leach were inspired or influenced by the Japanese philosopher Minagi Soksu, and they developed and promoted his philosophy he developed and promoted this philosophy in response to the rapid industrialization taking place in Japan. He wanted to elevate and value the handmade in the everyday object. Objects should reflect the process, the touch of the hand. It should be apparent in things that you consider both art and craft. Yanagi's philosophies informed the Japanese potters Kwai Kanjuro, Sojo Hamada, and this became a major influence with both Ray's work and in his 33 years of teaching at PSU. Beginning in the late 50s and through the 60s, Hamada and Leach traveled and did workshops around the world. Ray worked with Hamada when he came to the University of Seattle. The touch of the hand, the mark of the beauty, would be apparent in Ray's work, no matter the media. And I just want to talk. So if you look at this piece, it's really austere, it's fine about form. And then this piece, there is a good chance that it was shaped and faceted on the wheel, and that it was formed while it was still soft, and there maybe isn't a worry about how pretty and clean it is down at the bottom. And it's still, I don't know how old this piece is, but it still has a life and breath.
63.
63. I'm going to move it back.
I mean, it was done in 63.
Yeah. Anyway, what Hamada and Leach did in terms of inspiring that new Japanese philosophy of the Mingei, where really the touch of the hand needs to be apparent in the work, was revolutionary because, and Jerry, you can correct me later, but early on, it was kind of like we were, we, not me, that potters were trying to make work as good as a machine. And it wasn't until then the Eastern influences came in that work became softer and more plastic, and you could see things about the process. Luke, you want to move that panel? So I cleverly chose a glass panel to talk about, which someone bought and has been shipped to California. And Luke, you can, well, anyway. So while Ray was a student at Washington University in St. Louis, he worked in a frame shop that framed the artwork of prominent artists like Picasso, Matisse, and others. Ray was not only becoming familiar with these great artists in school, but Ray was intimately involved with their careful presentation and the framing of these great artists' work. Picasso and Matisse's influence is very much a part of these flat glass pieces. There's going to be a couple of things that aren't exactly true because it's a different piece, but we'll see it anyway. Here, Ray's direct approach with hot glass and flat glass combined with both clear and opalescent shapes, he divides up larger areas with small active lines. He's literally drawing with lead, and he varies the width of the lead line, and he is guiding the material. It's not controlling him, which is, I think, what higher level craft is about. Ray, you can turn tank up here. Ray is literally drawing in his head all the time, and then on everything else he gets hands on. This series and other flat glass pieces have a lot in common with Matisse cutouts, drawings that later would become windows for Matisse's chapel in France. Ray's approach with both blown and cast glass, he was making parts and artifacts to be assembled and later in any number of bas-reliefs, glass panels, multimedia works. These were never just about a technique or showing your glass prowess, but they involved Ray's sketches and what was transpiring in the glass shack. Ray established the glass shack in 1967. It was the second hot glass studio on the West Coast. In the parking lot of the Science Building. They were different days. All right. This is one of my faves. The teapot. The teapot exemplifies the tug of war. Here, I'm going to hold it up just for a minute so you can see this. I'm pretty sure this is grapevine or root. And this is not the handle that he bought at the local ceramic supply or craft store. He made this from scratch. Teapots exemplify Ray's tug of war between form and function. It was not uncommon to have Ray ask you if the piece you were working on was going to be about form or surface. Ray would usually have planned out what glaze slips he planned on for mark making on the surface of his work. For Ray, teapots had to straddle that impossible balance, make a strong visual statement, and function really well. He used the same criteria for pots that he would use for sculptures. Pieces needed to read really well all the way around, challenge the viewer, be well crafted, and inform the viewer if the work is focused more about form or function. What amazes collectors and students alike was the beauty and visual balance his teapots always had. I heard him say once, is that teapot going to drip after it pours? And this is like right after maybe I had put the spout on, it wasn't even dry yet. All right, how did you know it might drip? The lid was another important detail. Ray did not want the lid jumping off mid-pour. Lids needed to reinforce the form, they needed to integrate the handle, and oh, did I say anything about fit? Ray's lids have to fit. And this has tape on it because they probably got warned about me. But a lot of Ray's teapots, you barely even have to have a finger on here, and you can pour, and he's made it so that they're not going to fall off. There are still many owners of Ray's teapots who treat them more like rare sculptures and less like teapots. This would really piss Ray off. Handles. We gotta talk about handles. So imagine, I was at the ripe old age of like 17 or 18. I'm in like Ray's first night class. It's the only way you had to like sell your soul and do whatever to get in those classes. They were just waiting lines. And anyway, and it probably wasn't in that first class, but it was the next year that we were making teapots. And then he said, you need to put lugs. And lugs are these things right here. You can make a clay handle. You can make bamboo handles. There's all sorts of manner of way to do that. The beauty of having a handle that's made afterwards is that it doesn't absorb the heat. So when you pick it up, it doesn't, surprise you with heat. And also makes it visually interesting. So in that first teapot I made for Ray, we had to go dig up bamboo root. Bamboo root. And I didn't believe this at first. So we go and we hack and chop and we dig this root up, and it's really gnarly. It's like, maybe ceramics isn't for me, I don't know. And then we bring a whole bunch back, and then he shows us how to figure out the art, and then we carve the notches where they're going to fit in the lugs, and then we steam them, and we steam them, and we steam them, and then we take wire and we wire it together, and then you put it in there and hold it in place. Now, if you did a good job putting those lugs on there, when that bamboo root utilizes a little bit of its memory, hopefully it won't tear those lugs off. It's happened to more than one of my colleagues. Ray's teapots, his handles consisted of clay, bamboo root, grapevines, metal, wood. It was an ongoing thing. He never repeated things. He would always go up some direction of design and innovation with materials. Ray taught basic design, metals, drawing, and ceramics, and I'm sure I'm missing a few others, at PSU, and these were all indications of his incredible artistic depth. All right, I'm going to move over here to this wonderful display. I don't know if you guys can see this. So I am convinced, and Jerry, you can nod, I'm convinced that he made these at the Mullum Art Center. And he would throw these and make them and then take them home, and then, like a printmaker, go down and work in his room, or downstairs in his studio. And what's phenomenal about these pieces is that this is cobalt stain. And if you dribble cobalt stain on a piece of clay, you got to work real hard to get that off there. In fact, there's a really good chance there's going to be a haze or a shadow that would show up. And I remember a couple of times going down and seeing Ray work on these, and be listening to tennis or something, and he'd just be working away. And they were just elegant. It's a combination of really fine brushwork, broad brushstrokes, and then there's a dry point on here where I wonder if it's some of the dental tools that we used, and he basically scraped through the slip or the stain to get that white line, which I think of as dry point only in ceramics, which is just phenomenal. And again, this is kind of indicative to how Ray would make things look so very simple. It was funny, I had worked at the local art center when I first got out of college, and then he came years later and he would give me all sorts of crap about, it's a really good place now that you're gone. And anyway, but he was joking. It could never be as good. All right, I'm in the home stretch here, folks. This is good. My voice is not sounding like a seventh grader yet. Ray was always making sculpture. It just so happened that sometimes it was a cup, a vase, a teapot, or a large vessel. When I look at this figure, and this was just a cylinder that he threw on the wheel. You can see a little bit of brushwork, probably fired in a wood-fired kiln or a salt kiln. I look at this piece, I feel like I'm walking into the studio, and I see Ray on one of these monster kick wheels, and he's just throwing the piece, and he lifts it off, and he takes it over to a banding wheel, because like 4 people are waiting for your wheel, and he would set it on the banding wheel, and the piece is still wide open, and he would reach his fingers in, he would shape the belly, make the breasts, make the waist, use the edge of a piece of wood to suggest, and then when he was totally happy with how everything else here, then he took, in that moment of zen, he pinched that. And it's the kind of thing that you don't want to fuss with a whole bunch. And in that pinch, he would make 2 arms, a neck, and we have the Venus of Portland. So in closing, and I thank you so much for letting me share this with you, I'd just like to share a couple things I've learned from Ray. The pencil is never too short if you can sharpen it one more time. Why walk when you can ride your bike, including the 2nd floor at the art department at PSU? We won't publish it, so now we're going. It's not how well everything goes, it's how well we adapt to when things go sideways. This pertains to life and art. And finally, keep trying new things and let the process guide you. Ray was generous with both his creative insights and skills. He inspired a whole generation of artists and teachers. He remains the consummate role model of artist and teacher. Thank you. So it might be good for like 3 questions and then you're on your own. There's a piece in the show that I didn't talk about. I just chose these because I felt like they were little snapshots of his career.
Can you talk a little bit about how what firings he chose and the clay bodies he worked with?
Yes. It's very interesting for me. And Jerry, again, you can go like this. But early on, I think most glaze firing was oxidation, very clean, and then gas firing was just coming, and you were able to reduce and make a reduction atmosphere. And Ray just got on that wagon right away. And the crazy thing about that was you could put your chung glaze, and then mist it with a little copper or copper slip or something like that. And then you fire your kiln up to 2345. And then if for some reason you are just a couple of minutes late and you put the kiln reduction, meaning you start it for oxygen, you might miss it. And all those molecules have said goodbye and they're gone. And you don't get that beautiful copper blush. There's been no exchange of the oxygen for the carbon molecule. And Ray would pursue this most of his life. The summer I worked with him, we did a series of really large pieces, and he used a technique called downfiring, which I still am intrigued about. And he would take a red stoneware clay, do slits on it. Again, they made me think a lot of Picasso's direct brushwork. And then we would fire them in the gas kiln, and then we would do what's downfiring. I think we only fired to like cone 6. Just the time that Ray said to, we put the kiln in reduction, and the body turned almost black.